sponsored by Squarespace. Getting a handle on Midnight Story has been a bit of a challenge, even for us pros. The reveal was chaotic, and with it, lots of stories slipped into the background, and a lot of people were kinda confused. And I don't blame any of you, not least because much of what we were told seemed to be missing. There were no words in the big reunification of elven tribes, no word in the return of Ashara, but after delving into every aspect of the reveal, every interview that happened and connecting all of the dots, well, we've pretty much discovered all there is to discover. So today, you're going to know all you need to know about the story of Midnight. So here's the big stuff. Silvermoon. It's revamped, yes, but it's also ground zero for Xal'atath's attack on Azeroth. If you're wondering why, I'll get to that shortly. But there's more. We're going back to zul'aman, and whether the Blood Elves like it or not, we're teaming up with the native forest trolls. But then we go deeper to Haranir, which is the home of the Haranir. We thought their goddess was Azeroth or Elune, but what we're finding is more nuanced and a bit darker. And all of that will then lead us to the Void Scar, a whole new planet run by a race of hyper-intelligent void beings, a race that Xal'atath was once a member of. And trust me, that's kind of exciting. A while ago, we saw Xal'atath described as a survivor from the depths of time. I have a feeling that in Voidscar, we'll finally know what that means. So, Midnight is packed with lore, but it's all leading to one thing, that we somehow will lose, or that something bad will happen, and that will force us into the last Titan, and it will force us into that expansion by forcing the return of the Titans. So, strap in, because today we're finally explaining Midnight's story. Whenever people send me things, first impressions count. And that's where today's sponsor, Squarespace, can let you make that strong first impression so you actually get through to the people you want to get through to. And today, they're easier, faster, and less fictitious than anyone else, and that's all because of the new way that you build a site. And I'll walk you through it. So first, Blueprint guides you through making your own template, and this really is amazing. It helps you select what pages you want, what fonts are best, what color palette to use, and by them, of course, doing the hard work of curating all of those and making it all just work, they keep you right. And that also extends to them adding new features. You can sell digital and physical products, there's courses, there's bookings for physical and digital, and there's even native video. Yes, native, not just an embed. Which basically just means it looks and feels way better and way more pro. Now, it's all designed to work together, and rather than be a bunch of cobbled together features with inconsistent design, it's actually seamless and professional so that your customers actually have a great first impression, which is what you want. And whenever they convert, well, you have seamless buying with Squarespace payments. They really are the complete package, everything that you need, and by following my link, squarespace.com/BellularGaming, you get to build your site for free. And then when you're ready to send it live, my code, BellularGaming, gets you 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain. Let's set the scene. Xal'atath's key to victory is the Dark Heart, an ancient amulet created by Neltharion, who you may know as Deathwing. It was uncovered by a Ridicron, and it was handed to Xal'atath. She then pumped it full of Dalaran's arcane energy, Belladar's energy, and whatever else she could find. But then the Shadowguard Ethereals, who she had been working with, stole it. They stole it from underneath her, and they used it as a catalyst to bring back Dimensius. This was bad for Xal'atath, but true to form, she turned it to her advantage. That led to the events of patch 11.2, and with those concluded, she now has the most powerful being of the Void locked up in her little Pokeball, and nothing stands in her way to victory. And if you want to know what she does next, all you need to do is listen to her final words to Illyria.
But our little game is over. When next we meet, I will take everything you love.
From our perspective watching on, we then cut straight to Midnight's cinematic reveal, where the skies had opened and Void is raining down. Lorthamar, the regent, basically the lord of the Blood Elves, and Liadrin are standing at Silvermoon's defense, but Xal'atath, loaded with so much power, appears to be unstoppable. That is, until the light decides that Void can't have all the fun and portals in the Army of the Light. We've been told, by the way, that it's the Army of the Light, but check out this preview of the Voidspire raid, where we see the Armies of the Light. Plural, not just the people we met in Legion. Essentially, it's the collective armies of the light gathering from across Azeroth for one final stand. That means the Tauren Paladins, that means the priests, it means the Blood Knights, it means Halifal Arathi, Paladins from Stormwind, everyone. And in these images, we see the clash between light and void that we've all been waiting for. But that's just the beginning. That's what happens initially in Midnight. Midnight, of course, is far larger and will have far deeper implications. Across the world, Void is resurgent and we need to strike back. That means it's time to clean up the home front. And that's Silvermoon. For the Alliance, this will be their first time stepping into one of Azeroth's most ancient cities, but for the Horde, they'll be returning to somewhere totally transformed. Fel has been banished from the city, but dark factions in Murder Row still do dabble in the substance that nearly destroyed their people. Remember, this is not the first time that the Sunwell has been threatened. Arthas killed 90% of Quel'Thas's population on his march to resurrect Kel'Thuzad. He destroyed the Sunwell. He severed the High Elves' connection to its arcane energy. Without its power, they lost their immortality. They began to wither as a race. Just look at the withered Blood Elves, basically addicts cut off from their supply. And when all of this happened, there were two solutions. First, the Fel, offered by their prince, Kel'Thas. He, as the leader who had to deal with all of these problems post-Arthas, well, he ended up transforming his people into the Blood Elves, and he followed Illidan to Outland. But he left many behind, and he sent them knowledge of the Fel to feed their magical addiction. That's basically the Blood Elves that you play as if you start one in World of Warcraft. But of course, Kel'Thas went too deep, and eventually we had to put him down at Tempest Keep. Then, of course, he re-emerged and we fought him for the final time at Sunwell Plateau in one of the dungeons. But the Fel was not the only solution to their problem. In steps Lady Liadrin, a priestess of the light. She had suffered wars with the Amani trolls, the orcs in the Second War, and of course Arthas' invasion. And because of that, she became devout and incredibly ruthless. So, when the Blood Elves on Outland sent back a captured Naru called Muur, she, along with others, abused its power to form the Order of Blood Knights. That's why Blood Elves were able to be paladins in the Burning Crusade. But again, they drank too deep, and eventually we have to put down Muur as a Void Naru. That's actually why she felt unworthy of the light in the Midnight Cinematic, because she had abused its power. But in a way, the light doesn't care. It knows that the Sunwell cannot fall. It has its own agenda. And back in the Burning Crusade, the Prophet Velen stepped in and he cleansed the Sunwell using the core of Muur, and that freed the Blood Elves of the Fel and gave them back the Sunwell as their arcane font of power. But it wasn't the same Sunwell, because now it was infused with the light from that Naru, from the Prophet Velen, and because it is infused with the light, it is vulnerable to void corruption, because light and void are sides of the same coin. It's been 20 years since that stuff happened, and Quel'Thalas has now by and large healed from those wounds. The scourged Dreadscar is gone. The Ghostlands are once again part of the Eversong Woods, but one place remains haunted, Windrunner Spire, and we even know one of the ghosts haunting it, Sylvanas Windrunner. Yep, I said the S word, and because of that, we need to talk about family. Look around Donegal and you'll see Silver Covenant Rangers. That's a sure sign that Verisa Windrunner is keeping tabs on events. That, of course, is Verisa, the sister of Illyria, who we've seen a lot in the War Within, and also sister of Sylvanas. And the sister we'll focus on for now is actually Sylvanas, because after betraying the Horde and launching us into the Shadowlands, she had her soul healed by Uther the Lightbringer. Now, she told us that the Horde were as much her family as the Windrunners, but that she had to save some souls in the Maw for redemption. Essentially, Sylvanas knew she had to serve out her penance, and that is when she last left the narrative. It seems that perhaps her redemption will be complete, or that as a part of that journey, she will be doing something in this expansion, because it has been confirmed that she will be back. So that's two Windrunner sisters covered. Verisa, whose Silver Covenant Rangers have been keeping tabs of us in Donegal, and of course Sylvanas. As for Illyria, well, Xal'atath has always been one step ahead, but it's leading to something important. A moment where Illyria will have to control the void within her, or fall to it. I told you we were going to lose this expansion, or at least I think we're going to lose. And that's because we were essentially told that when the World Soul Saga was announced. Because whatever happens, it's going to be bad enough to force the Titans to return to Azeroth. And that moment could very much be a face-off between Xal'atath and Illyria. But she's not the only member of the family taking center stage. There's also Arator, her son. During the leveling campaign, we actually join him as we travel across the world, discovering what it means to be a paladin, and it doesn't all go well. Now, we've been told that this expansion will explore extremes, and we know that this campaign will go to two places. First, Light's Hope Chapel, which is the epitome of why the light is awesome. You know, brave souls standing against darkness, the few against the many. But he's also going to go to Stratholme, where he'll discover that as long as you believe hard enough, you can use the light to destroy innocent people. Like perhaps Arthas did in the Culling, perhaps like the Scarlet Crusade would continue to do. But they're not the only family who'll be central to Midnight. There's another one, and you may not know that Zul'jin actually had grandchildren. Who the hell is Zul'jin, you may be asking? Let me explain this stuff. So, trolls and elves have had a very ancient beef, and it's about to become a big problem because the Amani are facing a void invasion, but this time it's from the Twilight Hammer cult, which essentially tells us the stakes in the zul'aman zone. The Twilights worship the old gods, and one of their Cathraxi generals is actually buried beneath zul'aman. There's backstory that even ties Xal'atath to some of this stuff. Now, the Amani killed him, and they built their city over his corpse, but we all know that these Cathraxi don't stay dead, and the Twilight's Hammer will likely want to revive him. But that's not the only problem these trolls will face. The Amani Loa have disappeared, the Loa being essentially their gods, kind of wild spirits, and they will need our help to figure out where they've gone, because we'll need their help. Now, diving into the Loa will give us another opportunity to wrap up some plot threads that have been hanging around since Battle for Azeroth. Like, as one example, Vol'jin being now the Loa of Kings, so we might see him back as well. But ultimately, the tension here is that we're trying to help the Blood Elves, whilst the Blood Elves, well, deal with a deep, long-running historical hatred of trolls. Take Liadrin as an example. Her parents were murdered by the Amani trolls. Lorthmar spent the majority of his career as a ranger fighting against trolls. Going back to Warcraft 2, when trolls were introduced to the setting, forest trolls were the bad guy trolls. And this is a cycle of hatred going back thousands of years, with the greatest Amani warrior in that conflict being the guy I first mentioned, Zul'jin. But Zul'jin is dead. We actually saw his sin stone in Revendreth, so yeah, he, I suppose, got punished for going a little too far. But now it's up to his grandchildren to try and save their Loa and protect what little they have left of their kingdom. But these are all surface-level mysteries. So now, let's go into the depths of Midnight. The Haranir are our new allied race, but before we unlock them, we're going to have to convince them that Xal'atath is actually a threat. And that might sound very strange if you weren't playing the War Within and reading all the quest text, but don't worry, we have, and it's all been set up. Orwena is the main Haranir we met in the War Within, and she's actually an outsider even to her own people, and that's because, well, she chose to go and find help and, well, talk to us. Her kin didn't really like that. Essentially, she was sent visions by her goddess and sent on a mission to Khazalgar to investigate the Black Blood. This essentially is old god blood that was heavily involved in the Nerubian storyline, and of course, Xal'atath doing a lot of manipulation. This Black Blood is dangerous stuff, and as it seeped into Azeroth, it seemed to do damage. It seemed to be a threat. Now, this was the beginning of a hell of a mystery. So let me explain the mystery. It's quite something. At the end of the Legion expansion, when Sargeras stabs the planet, he dislodges oceans of old god blood that had already started to flood the deep places of the earth, corrupting everything that it touched. And anything trapped within is sent to the Unseeming, which is a realm of nightmare. You may remember, if you played the War Within, a number of world quests where you would have to enter the Unseeming, and that when you did, you found all sorts of horrible creatures. Well, as it turns out, Orwena's homeland, Harandar, was beginning to become infected by this black blood, but not in the literal way we saw in Khazalgar. Rather, in the way we see in the unseeming. Now, when Orwena was infected by it, she said that the song of her goddess had become discordant, and that is the infection that we will face in Haradar. These literal nightmares born of dislodged old god blood. Proper eldritch stuff. And if that all seems like a bunch of words that you don't know because you haven't paid attention to the lore, you don't know it, don't worry. Basically, all you need to understand is, imagine Cthulhu, humongous, Cthulhu's dead, and that Cthulhu's blood has got absolutely everywhere and is wreaking havoc. That's basically what's going on. So, we follow Orwena home, we meet her tribe, the Hararti, and we delve into the history of her people. It is, by the way, quite a history. Essentially, it goes back to one of the Titans called Aeonar. And Aeonar, whenever the Titans arrived in Azeroth, right, she planted a world tree. This world tree was called a Lunahir, and she planted it because she felt that it would help to cleanse the world of the old god corruption. But Aman'Thul, who is the leader of the Titan Pantheon, basically saw this tree as chaos, in the same way that the roots of a tree will crack a pavement, and he ripped it out. But he only ripped out the trunk. He did not notice that the roots were still there. And Elune, a goddess that appears to have ties to Aeonar, well, Elune sent guardians to tend to those roots. Those guardians are the Haranir. And since then, many more world trees have been planted. The roots of those trees have went deep. And as their roots went deep, they began to intertwine. And that is the place where the Haranir live. For Blizzard's word on this, during interviews, they told us Harandar is where the roots intersect, but it wasn't below any one place because it's nowhere physical. It exists as a pocket realm, a bit like the Emerald Dream, but also a bit different. And at least my read on this so far is that it sort of exists in the sleeping mind of our world soul, a pocket dimension in a way. It's a bioluminescent forest, but it's one with darkness. Remember this place from the Legion expansion? It's where we fought Xavius. Now, this place is called the Rift of Uln, and it's this realm of utter darkness where nightmares spawn. We actually know that part of Harandar is named the Rift of Uln. We'll almost certainly go there, and there's also a one-boss raid coming in this expansion that is known as the Dream Rift. So it seems that perhaps the Dream Rift is where the Emerald Dream and Harandar intersect, or something along those lines. But it's a place that is spawning nightmares, and those nightmares are attacking the Haranir. It's such a threat that many chose to forsake their oaths to their goddess and to instead become what are known as Shulka and defend the realm from those nightmares. But here's the real takeaway I want you to understand from this segment, because it's really going to help make all this come together, right? So, the place is somewhat from the dreams of their goddess, but a lot of this place is actually quite dark. There are nightmare things. There is the unseeming, which is our first hint at that. And you know what that tells me? It tells me that their goddess, perhaps Elune, perhaps Azeroth, that there is also darkness and infection within it. All of which opens quite the question. Is it Elune who sent the Haranir to the roots? Is she the goddess? Is it Aeonar, the Titan of Life? Or is it our sleeping world soul? And are we soon to fight the nightmares in Azeroth's dreams? It's pretty big stuff, honestly. Could be quite cool. But there's an obvious thing looming over everything. Xal'atath, and the big question, what is her next step? What the hell does she want to do? This leads me to Voidscar. It's a new planet that's been added to the Warcraft universe. Now, we only know it from the Voidstorm. It appears that we can fly through the Voidstorm to Voidscar. And while Midnight's sure to have all the history and the details, the important lore is actually stuff that we know. It has one big rule: survival of the fittest. It is a competitive place, and within it resides, and this is the big news, a race of hyper-intelligent native void creatures called the Dominar. And the shocker is that Xal'atath was once a member of this race. And from the name alone, it sounds like something similar to Naru, right? Naru, Mechanar, Vindikar, Dominar. So it's a mixture of that and also domination. And when we think about how the light and the void are sides of the same coin, we can basically see this as being a complete mirror. It's also the location of Xal'atath's stronghold, and it's where those huge vortexes over Silvermoon lead to. And we'll be going there in true Champion of Azeroth fashion, following Xal'atath back through the vortex and bringing the fight to her. And when we get there, we'll help the Void Elves erect singularity anchors so that the insane gravitational forces don't crush us. With that done, we'll charge into the Void Spire where Dominus Aversian directs Xal'atath's forces. We'll also refight Nexus King Salhadar there, showing us that Xal'atath can retrieve anything that she has stuffed into the Darkheart. And that brings back a very big question: Dimensius and the Sunwell, because Dimensius is in the Darkheart, and Xal'atath does appear to be bringing the Darkheart near the Sunwell. Now, we know that we're going to lose a great battle in Midnight, or that something will happen that will force the Titans back. And here's what's key for the initial narrative. We know that the final launch raid of Midnight is called the March on Quell Danas. That would essentially mean we will arrive to help out shortly after the cinematic. We will go through these zones. We will deal with the Dream Rift raid. We'll also deal with the Void Spire. And then, 2 or 3 weeks after, we deal with the March on Quell Danas. Now, this is important because Quell Danas is where the Sunwell resides. Now, we can assume that the Void will be invading, that maybe they will actually take the Sunwell, and that perhaps we will need to march on Quell Danas to retake it. What will happen then? I don't exactly know, we'll just have to wait and find out, but we do know that this is just the beginning of the expansion, so whatever comes next is sure to be quite huge. And that's all the Midnight lore that's been revealed so far. There is a lot more to come. But if you want to find out why it's been a unique challenge gathering all this information, check out this video on why Midnight's launch and reveal was so chaotic.